This meeting will come to order. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tuesday, November 12th, 2024, and welcome to the Newburgh Board of Education meeting. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. DeRay.
Yesterday was Veterans Day. Veterans Day, we had 106 of that. It started in 1918 on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. We signed an armistice with Germany. It was a war to end all wars. That hasn't worked out so well. We salute every man and woman that has worn the uniform of the United States of America. I ask now, just take a moment and thank them for their service. Thank you very much.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Christine Bello.
Here.
Ms. Thomasina Bello.
Here.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher.
Here.
Ms. Victoria Boucher.
Here.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Here.
Mr. DeRay.
Present.
Mr. Howard.
Here.
Ms. Politi.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
And a second. Okay, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose. Matters made confidential under FERPA, employment history of employees or corporations, collective bargaining under the Taylor Law for the NTA, litigations, Butler Construction Group Incorporated versus Newburgh ECSD, index number EF005078-2024. J.C. Doe versus Newburgh ECSD et al., index number EF001776-2021. J.M. Doe versus Newburgh ECSD et al., index number EF005710-2021, and to obtain advice from legal counsel. Roll call.
Ms. Thomasina Bello. Yes. Ms. Mackenzie Boucher.
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher.
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Yes.
Mr. DeRay.
Yes.
Mr. Howard. Ms. Politi.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello.
Yes. Resolution 1.5, resolution to adopt policy on the first reading, number 1230, public comment on board meetings. Can I have a motion? And a second? And discussion? Okay, roll call.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher.
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher.
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Yes.
Mr. DeRay. Mr. Howard. Ms. Politi.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello.
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello.
Okay, so now we'll move into public comment on agenda items. And when called to speak, please state your name and municipality of residence. You will have 5 minutes to speak. We ask that you address your concerns to the board as a whole and not to individual board members. All speakers and observers must conduct themselves in a civil manner. Obscene language, defamatory statements, threats of violence, statements advocating racial, religious, or other forms of prejudice will not be tolerated. You cannot mention names of any individual board members, members of staff, or students of the district. We reserve the right to remove you from the podium and the meeting if you fail to comply. Thank you. So, who is first up?
This comment section is for items on the agenda. When your name is called, please state your agenda item you're speaking on. The first person signed up to speak on agenda items is Ms. Erica Perez.
Good evening. My name is Erica Perez. I am here to speak on agenda item 6.1 for the child abuse in educational settings. My question is, why is it that it goes from teacher or principal and then way down the line, authorities are called? The reason why my question is a child aged 12 and up are able to be charged with such crimes. We recently had an incident in our high school. So if school officials are questioning children, now without parents present, now you have potentially tainted or caused an issue on an ongoing investigation or a potential open investigation. When you're looking at teenagers in a high school setting, not even elementary school, they're able to be charged as adults at the age of 16. So now you are questioning people's children and getting comments and all this information without authorities, without informing parents. That's a huge concern. You are putting children's lives on the line. Now, if something sexual in nature has happened or some type of true abuse, a school should never be who deems it necessary to call a public official or, police department. There should be report police, report parent police. You know, there should be no internal investigation as to, what exactly, where's the time frame? Where are we informing these police? How soon are we informing parents? Because I know that I was informed by my child way before any school official called or said anything to me. That's an issue. That is a huge issue. You are taking criminal matters into your hands or into school's hands. And that's a problem because you are potentially leading somebody's child. If they're 16 and up, they could say something that could literally ruin their lives and stay on their record forever. So are we really going to do that to our kids? Are you not going to inform parents and have parents be the ones who truly deem what is happening or who we inform or how we go with our investigation? I think that that's more of a police matter and not a school matter. That's a parent matter. Parents need to be informed. We need transparency. We need to make this right. We need to make this policy make sense. Like, it truly needs to make sense. This is the safety of our children. Like, this has to be fixed. Police being notified way later and parents being notified way later, not acceptable. Completely and utterly unacceptable. Criminal matters really go into effect. Children 12 and up can be charged with sexual crimes. Parents need to know what is going on. And things go by very, very quietly. I had a case last year where a child was touched inappropriately on a bus, and it took a very long time. I was the one who told the parent, not the school. That's a problem. That is a huge problem. Parents need to be notified. This needs to be fixed. The wording needs to be fixed where parents are notified immediately if there's an issue. Granted, yes, I understand there are those extenuating circumstances where it could be a parent or a relative that is doing the assault, then fine, I understand you supersede and you go straight to the police. But again, it should never be a school who makes that determination whether or not this act is so egregious that we have to call the police. There are things that parents should make that choice on. Thank you.
The next person signed up to speak?
I'm sorry. I want to make sure that our attorney responds, but before he does that, because I want to make sure that we are crystal clear for the community, the laws that we get are laws from New York State Department of Education. We don't create the laws and regs here. We abide by what's sent down to us from New York State, but I'll ask Mr. Shaw to give some clarifying information. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. So this policy is about child abuse in an educational setting, which is distinguishable from domestic child abuse. And here it involves situations where either an employee of the district or a volunteer commits an act against a student. And that then is investigated. It isn't about a student getting into potential trouble. That's a whole different area. But the determination is whether or not there is a reasonable suspicion of child abuse in the educational setting. And there are certain definitions for that. Some of them are sex crimes, and that would be relatively rare. Sometimes it's a physical injury, sometimes a serious physical injury. And most of the cases are about relatively minor physical injuries and a determination of whether or not the degree of injury reaches the threshold where it would constitute child abuse. And staff members are trained in what to look for. So I think that the speaker combined a couple of different legal aspects well beyond what's in this policy. Thank you.
Mr. Shaw, if I could ask you to also respond to students being questioned without parents. I think that needs to be clarified as well.
Right. So for more than 60 years, the State Education Department, through the Commissioner, has informed school districts and superintendents what are the protocols regarding the police and administrators in questioning students. And if the police are going to question, the school authorities will call the parent and not allow the police to question the student on premises unless it is in the pursuit of a police matter where if the school authorities stood in the way, they would be arrested for obstructing justice. But in terms of principals or teachers being able to ask students incriminating questions without parental presence, that has always been the case. Our courts have dealt with it up to our Second Circuit Federal Court of Appeals in the case Pollnow versus Glennon from 1985. Children don't have Miranda rights in terms of the educational setting. And that's a way in which the district can keep everyone safe. And the extent to which there may be criminal prosecution of students, it's certainly not the practice in Newburgh to go out of your way to criminalize students. So those are judgments that have to be made based upon particular cases.
Does that answer everything? I'm not sure if that answered everything. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
The next person signed up to speak on agenda items is Ms. Tracy Wallace.
Hi, Tracy from City of Newburgh. So my question was also about the policy, the resolution for the policy of child abuse in educational setting. I was trying to read what the difference between the child abuse and emergency setting that you're removing, policy number 8461, and in the one that you're adopting, or 9620 today. So I think the confusion was, in which I was reading it, was in the old policy, it states in the first paragraph that the principal notify the authorities, whereas in the policy that I read tonight, which is the new policy that you'll be adopting tonight, is that it says, report to the superintendent, and there was the methods in which the reporting was stating on it that the authorities were not in the first set of the reporting. In fact, the difference between the two were, in any case where a written or oral allegation of child abuse by an employee or volunteer, an educational stating is made to a required reporter, the required reporter shall promptly complete the required state education department report form and personally deliver it to the principal of the school in which the child abuse allegedly occurred. So the way in which maybe it was written in the new policy is not stated in the old policy, whereas the old policy states that the principal or superintendent report to the authorities. And so it was differently stated in the policy that's being removed in the policy here. So the confusion is in the wording. So in the wording in which you're required to deliver it is to deliver it personally to the principal and required this form, whereas in the old policy, the principal, calls the authorities directly. So that's the difference between the two stated in this policy here. I'm just reading your policies. They're on your agenda. I'm sorry.
We don't necessarily have it on our page.
I have it on my iPad.
Yeah, we'll have to cast it.
So that's where the confusion was that one says you report to the authorities, whereas the other one, now there's a form and you deliver it to the principal directly.
Is that all you have to say? We don't want to interrupt your time because we do want to respond because it's important that we get appropriate information
Sure.
out. Thank you. Mr. Shaw.
So there is a state form, and the state form starts with a mandated reporter having to fill out the first part. Ordinarily, it will be a matter that would go to the building principal to determine whether or not there's reasonable suspicion. There are some situations where it goes directly to the superintendent, and I believe that the protocols in detail will be in an exhibit to the policy that'll be in the policy manual, but we'll certainly take a look at the wording based upon what you've said to see if there's anything further to reconcile.
The difference was the reporting to the police first and then reporting to the principal, and just the difference between the two.
Well, the police get the report after there is an administrative determination of reasonable suspicion.
So that
Without
is-
that, it doesn't go to the police.
So that's on the new policy.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move into public comment on non-agenda items.
The first person that signed up to speak on non-agenda items is Miss Gloria Montgomery.
Unfortunately, I won't be able to speak, so.
The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Ernie Mosel.
Good evening. My name is Reverend Ernie Mosel. I'm pastor of Christ Lutheran Church at 186 Fullerton Avenue, the church directly across the street from the front entrance of NFA. I've been pastor here for 19 years. 18 of these years have been decent and normal interactions with NFA students. This past year, our church building has sustained damage by NFA students. The purpose of me being here today and some of my church members here with me is to tell you, the Board of Education, what's going on with damage to our church building by NFA students. Quite honestly, hundreds of students gather. There have been fights. There's been sex performed on our property, a lot of marijuana smoked there. The police have been called about 5 times. I had one meeting with NFA administration, May 22nd, 2023, and a follow-up meeting last week, November 6th, 2024. I hope the foundation is being laid for working relationships with NFA administration, but again, tonight I'd like to inform the Board of Education about what's going on our church building at 186 Fullerton Avenue. We were advised by NFA Security to install fences in certain locations on our property and security cameras, which we did, several thousands of dollars, which for a small congregation is expensive. Those measures, however, quite honestly, are no match to the sheer numbers of students coming onto our property from NFA. In the last month alone, the police have been called for fights on our property and rocks thrown onto our church building and onto our windows. Because of an incident during which I was intimidated last year, I, as pastor, and I was dressed like this, when 4 individuals with masks and hoods, as I was parked in the church parking lot, surrounded my vehicle and looked in at me, I no longer feel comfortable. I, the pastor of the church, no longer feel comfortable parking in our own church parking lot. In the meeting last week, we learned that NFA defines a closed campus as students are allowed to leave but not to return. Our question for the Board of Education tonight is, if these hundreds of students are on our property, what is your responsibility? We can't be expected to care for hundreds of students. Except for 2 staff persons, we have not received any response from NFA or the Superintendent of Schools office to telephone calls or emails asking for partnerships and working relationships. We desperately would like partnerships and a working relationship. So we ask what is your responsibility of the students, and we ask you to redefine what a closed campus is and take responsibility for students.
Onyx.
So I guess I can start with how unfortunate that is happening to your congregation. I think that when we received your message, one of the things that we have been trying to work with our Director of Safety and Security is to really research what that closed campus definition is and how does it extend, and really how are we notifying our community partners to support. Dismissal. You will notice since last week there might be other, SNUG I think was trying to assist us with dismissal, as well as touching base with other community-based resources that did receive grant funding in order to help support this concern. We also have asked NFA administration, there are many students that often ask us how they can support the community. This is a huge concern. We know what you have been dealing with, and we are committed to that partnership and working with the larger outside community for support around arrival and dismissal. So I know that some of our staff has been in contact, and we will continue that partnership with Dr. Soto, as well as Anthony Gerasi and Mrs. Valentino, to ensure that we have a resolution, as well as some education for our students about what that means to our community when events like that do happen.
The next person signed up to speak on non-agenda items is Ms. Erica Perez.
Good evening, Erica Perez again, New Windsor. I am here to speak on an incident that is ongoing, or not ongoing, but did transpire and took some time and a whole lot of stuff away from our high schoolers. It's so unfortunate that the entire student body had to pay. You know, the moving of homecoming and pep rally and all that, it's unfortunate. Like, let's face it, they're going to homecoming on a Thursday night and getting up for school the next morning at 5 a.m., where originally it was supposed to be on a Saturday evening so that they can enjoy themselves and then go home, you know, but now it's a completely different experience for them. You know, some of these children have worked their entire lives and are really busting their butts to have a great senior year, and they're just not getting it. Our football team, you know, I can't even, I'm at a loss of words for how much so many of them have lost. You know, we have great, exceptional players. Like, such exceptional players. They should be commended. And because it took so long to look into a situation, now all of them lost the end of their year. My son lost his last football game. You know, I knew about a situation 5 days prior to an email. They had their locker rooms taken away. We were never informed. We could have gotten a very vague message saying an incident transpired, we are investigating, no more locker rooms until further notice. Parents will be informed of such incident or what comes, you know, very vague. Nobody was asking for details. Nobody did, but the way things transpired took everything away from our students. And how many of our juniors and seniors are gonna actually have to pay for that? How many of them aren't counting on scholarships, athletic scholarships? Is that gonna affect them? Does that affect them? Are they gonna get accepted? Are they not gonna get scholarships? Now that they've been suspended or team has been ended, they didn't go to sections, like, let's face it, how many of our children suffer from this? Once again, our children are suffering. I hear so many people come up here and say, make it make sense. It's still not making sense to me. It really does not. These kids lost they were crushed. We could have very easily looked into how many kids were involved, what was going on, pulled those kids off and still let the kids who were busting their butts play. They worked hard. They worked hard this year. They're studying hard. These kids don't come home till late at night, do their homework, some of them in honors courses, still busting their butts, getting up at 5 a.m. every morning, walking to that bus at 6 a.m., still making every effort to do what is right. And they got punished. They got penalized. Everything got taken away from them. How many innocent students suffered in this circumstance, in this instance? And why did it take so long for parents to be informed? It would not have gotten so messy if parents were informed appropriately. Our children told us, our children, why are there pipes in the locker room? Why is there a broken down goal in the locker room? Why are there chairs there? Why isn't there a coach in the office? So that if they are getting out of line, because let's face it, they're kids. They're kids. You got to be within earshot. Even though they're high schoolers, they're teenagers, they're still children. They're still children. I'm not saying they need a babysitter, because I know that's what I'm gonna hear. They don't need a babysitter, they don't need somebody inside, like physically in the locker room watching them. Let's face it, that's not okay. But they could have been in that office. They could have known, they could have stopped it. Somebody could have heard and said, hey, let's get this fixed before their entire season got ruined. They worked so hard for what? Because now they got nothing. JV was really killing it. Varsity was really, we did good. But now we've got nothing. And what are these kids going to college with next year? How do they suffer? Did anyone think of that? How do they suffer? How do all of our children pay in this situation? Are we truly thinking about the best interest of the child? Are we? Thank you.
The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Ronaldo Santiago.
Good evening, Superintendent, members of the board. My fiance covered a lot of what I'm going to say. I'm not going to try not to beat a dead horse too badly. But what I am going to speak to is how this situation was handled, a couple of points. This email was received that was sent by the district on October 30th. And as my fiance alluded to, 5 days prior, our children told us, not the district, our children told us something happened. And as she said, even within the email it describes that Friday something was known. If Friday an email missive such as this one was sent out saying, we are aware of an incident, we are investigating, please stand by for further information, it stops the rumor mill. It stops parents from wondering what the heck is going on. I'm going to give praise to the administration over at Horizons right now. Not taking anything away from Ms. Matos and Ms. Bunce, loved them, wish them continued success in their current positions, But I gotta say, building upon their administration, the new administration, HOH, they flood us with information. We are getting emails constantly, and I can understand where some folks might feel that's too much, some folks might tune it out, but by my estimation, more communication is always going to be better than less. Now, that email that came out on Wednesday the 30th was after a meeting that was called to NFA, and I'm sorry, that meeting was farce. And I say this simply because you had an athletic director who stood up there and in the first sentence said, "This is not a Q&A, you're just getting information from us." Now, last time I checked, I was sitting at a school at that time, but I certainly wasn't a student. And I certainly refused to be talked to as a child. And for something so grave that it necessitated the canceling of the rest of our students' football season, I don't understand how a group of administrators got together, and obviously, it was not a good situation. I do not envy the position you were in. But how a group of administrators got together, said, "This is how we're going to conduct this meeting," and expected that meeting not to devolve into a shouting match. Because things got, as everyone who was at that meeting knows, things got very heated. You had your security pretty worried, I can say that. But if you're just going to dictate to the parents, send an email. Because that's essentially what it was. You called everybody up to dictate to them, well, if that's it, then write a missive and send it out. Because there's no point if we're not allowed to bounce questions, what's going on, what's happening, and get feedback. That's one-way communication. That's something I can read. I pray almost on a daily basis for the success for the superintendent and this board. To put it simply, your success equals our children's success. But that success has to be built on some pillars, and some pillars I have pounded on this freaking podium before: communication and transparency. If we do not have that, it is going to be a tough road to hoe for each and every one of us. Thank you.
The next person signed up to speak on
Point of
non-
order. Point of order. Madam President, I would like to point out that speakers were given the notice at the beginning that they are not allowed to say individuals' names, and there were at least 4 to 5 different names stated in that past speech. They're not allowed to speak names either way, praise or negatively.
They said we're not allowed to say anything about the board. Okay.
The next person signed up to speak on non-agenda items is Mr. Jeff Ehlers.
My name's Jeff Ehlers. I live in New Windsor. I have 3 children. One graduated from NFA in 2023. I have 2 that are currently at NFA North. This district is a disaster, complete disaster. I used to defend it when people said, "Oh, your kids go to Newburgh?" I said, "Oh yeah, it's not that bad. You wouldn't believe it. It has just crashed. It's horrible. I'm embarrassed to tell my friends and family that my kids go to this district. It's horrendous." Do you remember there were a couple of years ago, we had to cancel school a number of days because there were so many shootings in the city, and right across from South. Then we had a shooting at a youth night at NFA in the back parking lot. And this district tried to distance themselves from that so much, it's ridiculous. Oh, it didn't happen at the game. It happened in the back parking lot, and a round went through a window. And you, oh no, it didn't happen here, it didn't happen there. Horrible. The incident that happened back, I believe the incident was actually on October 22nd. 4 students were suspended on October 25th from the game against Kingston. Then on Tuesday, the 30th, no, excuse me, Wednesday, the 31st, there was an email went out that said the JV season was over. And then, in that, shortly after that, there was a announcement that there was going to be a meeting with parents and players. Go there. Like the last speaker said, it could have been handled in an email because we didn't have an opportunity to speak. And I can tell you right now, I was one of the parents that got heated at that meeting. Okay, because we were completely disrespected the way we were spoken to. Now to go on with the kids. I've been involved with youth sports for probably 15 years. I've coached half of the varsity football team, JV and freshmen. I know these are good kids, okay? Somebody might have screwed up somewhere, but to suspend kids that weren't involved, just outright weren't involved. You have the cheerleaders, their night was canceled. The band, the advanced dance team, Lords, their game was canceled. All those cheerleaders, all those people. Lucas probably lost $1,000 because we didn't buy pizza from him that night. The Coca-Cola man lost money. When we were buying the flowers for the parents for senior night, the florist lost money. You don't realize how many people this affected. Okay, then you have the whole disaster of Newburgh was supposed to host the Section 9 championship whether we were in it or not. That's decided months beforehand. That was moved. Then, when we were told, oh, yeah, the Lord's game is canceled, but we're going to let you have the section championship. Then a couple days later, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to backtrack, and we're going to cancel it again. We led you on and led you to believe that you're going to get that chance, but now we're going to crash your hopes and dreams. Okay? So then it was, oh, we're going to let you have senior night at Middletown. Well, are you kidding me? That gesture was a joke. You should be embarrassed that you came up with that. Then there's the pep rally. The pep rally is usually right before a big game, something like that. Now it's on a Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock in the gym. I haven't heard anything. Who's allowed? Who's being to attend this? Are the parents going? Is there a senior night anymore? There's nothing involved in that. We were supposed to, what was the word? Honor our athletes at a later date. I believe that's what you said. That was supposed to be at the pep rally. Has anybody made any plans for any of that? Is there anything done? Nothing? You've failed our children again. All right? Disaster.
Okay, I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you. So tonight, item 4.1, Leading for Literacy series, we look to educate our community about new research, state expectations, and steps we are taking as a leadership team so we can better understand our roles in working together to teach our scholars to read. Tonight, Dr. Shannon O'Grady, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, and Ms. Sophia Rawlings, our Director of Exceptional Learners, will deliver our third presentation in our Leading for Literacy series. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Don't worry, Ms. Rawlings and I are only going to talk for about an hour and 45 minutes. So tonight, Ms. Rawlings and I, can you all hear me if I stand like this? Tonight, Ms. Rawlings and I will present our third in a series of Leading for Literacy. And tonight we'll focus on Brief 5, which is concentrated on the science of reading in the elementary years. So in other words, kindergarten to 5th grade. Over the course of the past 2 months, we've done our best to explain what the science of reading is and what it isn't. These key ideas are the tenets of science of reading. In other words, the science of reading is a body of research. It's a broad body of research. It is not a curriculum. I've spoke ad nauseum about the big six. Mr. Stewart can probably explain them. Oral language, phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, comprehension, and fluency. But here is the true truth from my perspective, folks. While much of the briefs are steeped in academic jargon, most of this is plain old common sense. So when we talk about a culturally responsive approach or culturally responsive pedagogy, well, don't we all want to see ourselves in the books that we read? Don't we all want our classroom libraries to be windows to other cultures and mirrors to ourselves? Doesn't it just make good, clean sense that a 3rd grader who traverses the world in a wheelchair once in a while happens upon a book where the main character also traverses the world in a wheelchair? Doesn't that just make sense? And when we talk about social and emotional learning and an affirming environment, so much of that is plain old common sense as well. You might be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and if you're not, don't worry about it because that's common sense as well. It simply means that when our basic needs are met, when we feel a part of something, when we're not hungry, when we're not worried about an imminent threat, that we are able to actualize our potential. Common sense. And when we humans feel safe and our basic needs are met, we're ready to learn. This does not know an age. We all crave a sense of belonging. We all want to feel seen. We all want to feel relevant. So I'm new to this district, and I can tell you that a few weeks ago, I was at GAMS for our district-wide trunk or treat. And I think I was trying to secure like Swedish fish or M&Ms or something. And a kindergartner from Fostertown approached me, and he said, "Dr. O'Grady, you sat next to me on the rug today." Now, I've only been here a few months, and before this I was a principal where I worked with students more directly than I do now. And that little 5-year-old made my night. I am a 50-year-old woman, I'm not ashamed to say that, and I've had high highs and I've had low lows. And that kindergartner from Fostertown made me feel seen because he remembered my name. Now, I've had lived experiences. I've had time to develop coping skills. But how impactful is that in reverse, right? For a child to go into a classroom, to feel seen, to feel heard. And I can tell you that I've been in classrooms, and it's happening all across Newburgh. It's happening in our elementary classrooms. I know, I've seen it. So little Natasha might not love reading. In fact, she might feel like she's not a great reader, but she loves bearded dragons. So her teacher is making sure that she's stocking her classroom with books about bearded dragons. That's what the science of reading is telling us. It's not rocket science. It's cultivating an affirming environment. I see this all across Newburgh. Word problems. I know we're talking about reading, but word problems, right? Where the ascribed word problem includes names like Polly and Susan. But what do magical teachers do across Newburgh? They say Letitia and Elisa. So they change the word problem. And they say Letitia and Elisa are sharing a plate of 20 cookies, right? And so Letitia and Elisa are sitting in that classroom, and all of a sudden that boring word problem comes alive. Why? Because the students feel seen and they feel heard. And that's really what the science of reading is about. I know we throw a lot of academic jargon at you from time to time, but really it's making sure that our children are invested, they feel seen, they feel heard, and we take the time to find out what they want to read about. And now I'll pass on to my colleague. Do I push this? Yes.
Thank you for having me once again. It's going to be tough to follow that, but I'll try my best. So the science of reading, we've kind of talked about this, and the briefs really flow well into each other. We started with pre-K, and we talked about what a pre-K classroom looks like, what a pre-K classroom feels like. And going into elementary, we're building on this. We're building on skills that were already established, and we're becoming more rigorous and a little bit more complex. And elementary, believe it or not, has a tremendous spectrum. We have kids in elementary who are kindergartners walking in and they have no idea where to go. We have our fifth graders who look like mini adults. Sometimes I stand next to them and I stand 5'10", and they're taller than me. So we have a spectrum of development. We have a spectrum of what we're expecting from students at the elementary level, and we build literacy into those developmentally. I wanted to take a look at this again, and this is the exact same image that we looked at when we took a look at this 2 weeks ago. And we talked about high impact practices. These are the things that we want to see in classrooms to build strong readers, to build people who are literate and can really have opportunity and access as adults. So at pre-K, it's the same as it is at elementary. The only thing that you'll notice is shifting are the bars. So that's the time, that's the amount of rigor, and the expectation that we're expecting in the elementary years. But what I noticed really finally was that the engagement bar, that middle bar, kind of remains the same from pre-K to elementary. And that says a few things in regards to what we're expecting in terms of building readers. We want students engaged in text. We want readers to read. We want books in hands. We want kids to enjoy literacy. And what we do here in Newburgh and to build literacy is that we make sure that instruction has opportunities for kids to have eyes on text. We give them choice, we give them access, and we continue to build that by creating these lifelong learners. In our elementary classrooms, I think COVID had killed it for a while. Rugs are almost a sacred space. Kids sit on rugs and they are ready to absorb books, they're ready to absorb learning. And that's one of the spaces that we really build literacy. You'll see a lot of teachers, some of our teachers have rocking chairs, chairs have gotten a little fancier these days, they may have other chairs, and they're reading to kids on a daily basis. And we're gonna just kind of jump into what a read aloud would look like at an elementary level.
So folks, sometimes when we think about read alouds, we think about picture books. We think about, 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, but I can tell you that read alouds are a gift to all ages. So just to show you what it might feel like in a 4th grade classroom where you have a book with no pictures, please indulge me as I read from The One and Only Ivan. If you don't know this book, it's a winner. If you have nieces or nephews or grandchildren or kids of your own, I strongly suggest it. So, hello, I am Ivan. I am a gorilla. It's not as easy as it looks. People call me the freeway gorilla, the ape at exit 8, the one and only Ivan, mighty silverback. The names are mine, but they're not me. I am Ivan, just Ivan, only Ivan. Humans waste words. They toss them around like banana peels and leave them to rot. Everyone knows the peels are the best part. I suppose you think gorillas can't understand you. Of course, you also probably think we can't walk upright. Try knuckle walking for an hour. You tell me which way is more fun. I've learned to understand human words over the years. But understanding human speech is not the same as understanding humans. Humans speak too much. They chatter like chimps, crowding the world with their noise, even when they have nothing to say. It took me some time to recognize all those human sounds, to weave words into things. But I was patient. Patient is a useful way to be when you're an ape. Gorillas are as patient as stones. Humans, not so much. And so I read that to you because as the teacher in the room, hopefully you are the best, most skilled reader, right? And for those students who don't have access to this text yet, that doesn't mean that they don't have access to complex thoughts. So I just read this to you. I'm not going to do this to you. I'm not going to torture you, but I could say, hey, let's engage in a turn and talk, where you talk about these complex ideas that are in this text. I can ask you about perspective, who's telling the story. And so when we talk about the science of reading, it's really important to remember that listening and speaking are instrumental parts of the science of reading, and that you are never, ever too old to be read to.
So I'm kind of going to jump a little bit because it kind of connects to exactly what we just talked about. We talk about reading as an island and by itself. However, it's so interconnected. And a big part of what we talk about when we speak about reading is listening skills. And research has been done and really supports what we just talked about in regards to listening comprehension. Students are able to understand by oral reading and listening way more than they're actually able to do through reading comprehension. So while this may be a 4th or 5th grade level text, we want to be exposing our students to those texts at a younger age because they'll be able to access it through listening comprehension. And we know that throughout their learning, their primary years, the listening comprehension is always going to outpace the reading comprehension. So think for a second about a time that you may have a discussion with an elementary student. You may wonder, how does this kid know this? How are they able to talk about something so complex? And how are they able to wrap their brains around these ideas? And that's because they have that listening comprehension. And we don't want to suppress that, so that's why we want to expose them to higher level text. We want to give them complex text on a regular basis because we want to continue to build that. That's really an indicator for long-term literacy skills. That's an indicator for being able to think at a higher level and to have rigor behind what you do as an academic student. I'm going to bounce back a little bit. So when we talk about engagement in text, one of the things that we really plainly and simply want is students reading daily. One of the things structured by the C&I department is really having schedules that are aligned to what we're thinking. Our students at each grade level have times chunked out of the day that really aligns to this framework. They have time to read independently. They have time where they're getting explicit instruction. They have time where they're getting small group instruction to target these specific skills. And that's something that we want to continue because we know that the more we're exposing students to text, that it builds vocabulary. There's research that talks about how they perform in exams. There's research that talks about just their ability to speak. So these are things that we are looking at behind the scenes and making sure that we have the framework for. And that's exactly what the literacy brief does. It tells us how to really set up the infrastructure to help our schools and students to be successful. So once again, at the high impact practices, the other bar that I kind of took a look at was the text-based discussions and writing opportunities. If you take a look at pre-K, it took a big leap into elementary, almost kind of doubled. So we talked about reading and speaking and listening. That's something that we want to continue to see in classrooms. You'll see in a lot of classrooms, there's always posters about accountable talk. I agree. I want to add on. I think. I'm wondering. These are ways to get students to really demonstrate their comprehension. These are ways to get our kids speaking and listening. And these are ways that we build that infrastructure for our kids to be successful listeners, speakers, and then readers. I just want to give kudos again. I'm just going to keep shouting you out. When we have an interactive read aloud, there's a lot of work that goes into it. Our teachers are great readers and they make books look fun, but behind the scenes, there's a lot that's happening. There's text selection. We want to select a text that students are going to enjoy, that it's going to build knowledge, and that's connected to the curriculum and the work that they're doing. There's a purpose. We want to know why we're reading. A lot of times teachers may think and say, hey, I want you to think about the main idea. I want you to think about how you connect to this character before reading so that the students know that there's a purpose to reading that text. Before reading, our teachers review and practice the text. They don't just grab books and say, I'm just going to sit and read today. And as we're reading, we animate and we are expressive. That builds that joy. That builds that corner and that hub in that classroom. That's a sacred space to really develop that love of learning. And of course, connecting back to the discussions, we want to discuss the text and have that follow-up. In building on the reading and listening and reading, we have writing. We want to build writers and embed writing throughout our day as well. Our students are writing about text as they learn about it to build the comprehension and to also build the writing skills. One thing that you'll notice, and this is right at the middle, third grade is always a good grade to kind of hub on, is that as you have kids at home, the paper looks different. If you have a kindergartner, the paper might just be a picture and a sentence or a word. That is writing skills. In the third grade, this is the mid-range. There is a picture because that's how you express your understanding. There are some lines, they're a little bit larger, and the expectation is that they're starting to build sentences. As we get to a fifth grade level, we may just see very fine college rule lines where they're expected to write longer pieces of more variety. So I think the big takeaway here for us in terms of the literacy briefs is that these high impact practices are continuing K through 12. We started at pre-K, we talked about elementary, and what you're seeing as they shift is that the high impact practices don't change. What the readers need to be successful, to be literate, are the same. What may change on a day-to-day and year-by-year level is the amount and the complexity of the text and the expectation for students. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you.
Sure.
Fred?
Now you've implemented this stuff, what kind of feedback are you getting from the teachers and the students in the class?
I don't think that we've implemented it. I think it has existed, if I'm being honest. So it's not that we've implemented it. There's nothing new under the sun, right? And so I'm proud to say that I'm part of a district where it exists. And now we're just giving it a common vernacular, a common language, so that when we talk, we're not confused and we're not saying the same thing but in different ways. I think the science of reading is a body of research, but teachers were doing this in Newburgh. Before I got here, they were doing it. I didn't just walk in and change everything and make everything magical. I'm not that good. They were doing it. They were cultivating community. They were building classroom libraries that were culturally responsive. So as far as the feedback, I can't tell you. I think we can find out, but I can tell you that it's happening and it exists in Newburgh, and I'm very optimistic.
Mr. Howard?
Yes, so very, very nice presentation. But I need you to explain, I need you to go back. I understand, and trust and believe, I understand what you mean when you say it's already been in play.
Right.
But we have a lot of students that can't read. So I would love for you to explain to us, what are we doing differently? And how do we match remediation and rigor in the same space?
You want to try and then I'll jump in? Either one.
Oh, sure.
We both can do it.
Okay. I think a big part of it is we are seeing great stuff. We're trying to make sure that we're spreading that. We're trying to look at the best practices and make sure that we're building that infrastructure. I think what the New York State is doing is saying that this is what needs to happen across the board to have successful readers, and we're looking at that information and using that as district leaders, as building leaders to support teachers. So one of the things that we've done Previously, as we worked on our, no, what do we do?
What do we do?
Give me the way. We worked on developing PD for teachers.
There you go.
Using this research, right? So we're trying to build that out.
Building
Like,
capacity.
Building capacity. So working on that and making sure that we have these things that are great, how can we build it and actually make it a system and make it something that we're seeing consistently? That's the tier 1 support that we are trying to continue to provide.
Yeah, and to add on to that, Mr. Howard, of course, we know exactly what you're talking about. But part of my role now is to, along with my colleague, Dr. Soto, and then is to create systems so that we're all talking to each other, like in special education, right? That's part of my role, is to build capacity and eliminate barriers, because what we don't want is things to work in silos or pockets, right? So if we have best practices, our wonderful superintendent said, I want you to do work with the coaches, the instructional coaches, right? And so instructional coaches are all over, right? So what we want to do is get them together and engage in showcase walks and share best practices so that it's not existing in one place, but it's not existing in another. So what I'm trying to say is, I don't have to do much work as far as giving folks tools, as much as I, as the assistant superintendent, have to help cultivate systems for sharing best practices. And we've already begun that work.
Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, not casting aspersions on anyone. This work is a heavy lift. And we have kids at the middle school and high school who can't read. But my question is this: with the work that we're putting in now, early, I'm confident going forward that's not going to happen. But what are we going to do to ensure that children don't get to the middle school and high school levels and aren't reading on grade level? Because what that actually means is that those children can't do the work that's being put in front of them. Because if you can't read on grade level, if you're reading at a third grade reading level as a freshman or a sophomore, you can't possibly be doing high school work. And I'm curious how we're dealing with that, because we know it exists. And that's something that happened. And I know that what we're doing now is putting things in place to ensure that that doesn't happen going forward. But what about those children? How are we going to help them? What is in place now to get them across the academy field?
So this might sound like I'm regurgitating, but I'm not, I promise you. Just give me a second to finish my thought. So when we build those systems, right, the systems we were talking about and eliminating those barriers, right, part of that is something called progress monitoring, right? So it's saying, okay, over at, HOH, we're using this to progress monitor, right? And then over at New Windsor, we're using this. Well, no, now we're talking about systematizing, right? And creating benchmarks that are common, and then working shoulder to shoulder with folks in different departments so that we can differentiate instruction and create multi-tiered systems of support, AKA RTI. We're going to do a better job at that because, response to intervention, which is we're moving into a system of multi-tiered systems of support, right, Mr. Baer? So, which means creating this wraparound approach where we acknowledge that all of the tenets that we were talking about, the science of reading, that it matters, right? The social and emotional component matters. If I feel affirmed in a classroom, I'm going to be more engaged in the learning, and it's about systematizing all of that, but including the nuts and bolts, and not just the warm fuzzy stuff, right? Like the morning message, talking about phonemic awareness and phonics, naming it, because the first step, we have to name it to tame it, right? We have to name what it is. And if you're calling it one thing over at ABC Elementary and I'm calling it something else at DEF Elementary, then we can't really share and optimize our potential as a district, right? But once we start systematizing and progress monitoring, meaning using the same system to say, wait a minute, these are the benchmarks, they're not making the cut over here, what's going on, and then sharing that information, right? Because the answer is in the room here, Mr. Howard. The answer is in this district. We have smart people in this district. But what we have to do a better job at, which I'm working really hard at right now along with my partners, is systematizing that. And one of our really, really useful strategies is doing what my colleague over here just said, building capacity among our instructional coaches, right? So that we can share best practices and hold our feet to the fire on it, right? I mean, we have to start somewhere. We cannot be scholars of the problem. Right?
Last question. One thing I do know about working with young boys, young girls, young people, a 9th, 10th grader is not going to come to you and tell you he can't read. How are we able to identify those kids and either pull them out, get them the extra help, or talk to the children, put them in a curriculum that can help them catch up? I guess the question I'm asking is, what are we using to identify those children? Because a lot of times they're identified at inopportune times, and then the nature of a young person, I'll leave before I'm made a clown of.
Yeah.
I won't let you expose me. So how do we identify those kids?
So I think one of the things that we'll see is, we'll see that on the outside. We'll see the, I don't want to participate, or we'll see that and we'll think that these students are students who are not doing what they need to do. I will say also, Mr. Howard, this is the next presentation, secondary, but I'll jump in a little bit. What's really important, and I want to highlight again, is that this is the same. We don't usually, and previously, and if you look back at, I want to say old school, we don't really talk about the reading infrastructure at the secondary level. At that point, we have the expectation that we have readers and we're just teaching content. What's the shift right now is that that's not the expectation. The expectation is that we're still teaching reading through 12th grade. So I got you. So 9th through 12th, these high impact practices is something that we're continuing to embed and help those learners. For example, we'll see that at this point, writing is a concern for some of our students. We're embedding those practices and building capacity of secondary teachers to make sure that students have some low impact ways to access that. And to your point, a 12th grader is not going to want to pull to the side and say, hey, let's work on practicing sentences. We have to work on strategies that are tier 1, that can support them all, and that doesn't look like I'm pulling you aside for something that's special, because that is something that really is a hindrance to access and to learning literacy. So I want to name that, and Mrs. Soto, I apologize, at the secondary level, that's one of the big shifts. A lot of times when we hear people talk about learning to read, we think kindergarten, we think sounds. But this is something that the New York State at this point is saying goes towards 12th grade. We need to continue to embed that and build that at the secondary level. It's not something that we can say, 5th grade, you need to be reading, ship you off to secondary. It's a flow, and it's something that's really consistent and really strategic, that I think that's where the difference is, and that's where we're going to see the change and the shift of the mindset of our students, of our staff, and just in general in the way that we look at reading.
Thank you for that. I guess my question is, how are you going to measure growth? So it's a beautiful plan, and I understand that, but how do we see actual real results so that students don't end up in 11th grade unable to read? How are we able to measure that?
Well, we can do it together because myriad ways. We have multiple. So, for instance, we have diagnostics that we use for folks who don't know diagnostics, or an assessment where we do exactly that, diagnose. Teachers engage in conferences. We have writing benchmarks. We have unit tests. We have summative assessments, which are conducted, part of the way through, through a unit. So we are not at a loss for assessments. What we need to do is use the data from those assessments to improve our pedagogy or instruction. Because if I just give you a test and I take it and you get some arbitrary score like an 86, but then I don't use that data to inform my instruction, then that test was a waste of both of our time. So we are long on assessments, I think. Would you agree?
I agree, and I also want to say that especially at the elementary level,
we refer to RTI, MTSS, there's a multi-tiered support system. So if you are a student, you're struggling with reading, you go through tiered support. We're working on this letter, you're making growth. You're working on this skill, you're making growth. We take that growth and there are cycles. Our AIS workers, our teachers provide that support. And we continue to look at that. We look at growth, we look at where the students end, and then we come together, and that's where special ed sometimes comes into play. So if you're a student, you've been through the MTSS cycle for a whole year, and we're seeing, well, you're still at a kindergarten level, then we may say, we need to refer this to the special ed committee, and we need to see if we need another tier of support. So we have a very clear structure of how those tier support happens. Our elementary teachers are really great at tracking that. I get packets regularly in regards to this is a stack of work that we've done, this is the data that we've tracked, and we're still not making growth. We need to do something more. And that's when we go to a more formalized process and we talk to parents and we say, hey, we're seeing that there's something a little bit more. We want to dig into this. We think that this child may qualify for special education services, and then that's a shift. So we start with tier 1 here. We may have a multi-tier system where we provide some more, we track it, the data is truly important, and then we may say that child needs even more, and we go there. And that's academic and behavioral as well. It's a holistic structure.
So, okay, what does that timeline look like? So if there's a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, is that 1 year, 2 year, 3 year? Is that first quarter, second quarter, third quarter? How is that measured?
So it's child dependent. A cycle is usually about 10 weeks. So let's say you came in, you're in the 3rd grade, you're reading at a kindergarten level, and 10 weeks, you're reading at a 1st grade level, you're making growth. You're not on grade level, but you're making growth. That tells me that with the right supports, with the right structures, you were able to learn. Maybe it wasn't there before because of other reasons, but now you're making growth, we're gonna continue that support. But then it may be we put you in there for another cycle and you're not making the growth. You're still at a kindergarten level. The teachers have been trying different strategies. They have data upon data. They've met with the parents and they've talked about this. Then we move on to the next step. So I don't want to say it's a specific amount of time. It's very student specific, but we do have cycles and the team meets and the parents are included and we move on and provide more tier support based on what we're seeing.
And there are protocols in this school, so when you meet, so that we're efficient with our time, that you're, prior to the meeting, you're looking at data. So you're bringing a plethora of data about a child, social and emotional data, reading data, math data, so that when we get there, like I said earlier, you're not scholars of the problem, scratching your head going, what's happening here? We're looking at data, we're using our time effectively, it's systematized here, and then we can make a plan because we have the data already.
Thank you.
No other questions? Okay, thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Thank you for another thorough presentation on one of our highest priorities. Item 4.2, family and community engagement. Tonight, we have a special presentation highlighting our family and community engagement team, AKA our FACE team. Our educational system becomes stronger when our parents are fully engaged in their child's education. Dr. Natasha Freeman-Mack, our Assistant Superintendent for Equity and Access, will be delivering tonight's presentation with her amazing team.
I just want to protest the gifts because I didn't bring gifts for people.
Gifts are our friends. When you give gifts, you get less questions.
I'll be asking 10 questions tonight.
Where's the love, Shannon? Where's the love? Good evening. Family and community engagement in the Newburgh and Large City School District encompasses cultivating a relationship between families, our schools, and the community. And it really is a puzzle. And those pieces do come together lovely because of these folks that stand behind me. So here in the Newburgh and Large City School District, we really do have a unique community because it encompasses the city, the town, and also New Windsor. And everyone that behind me is going to speak to that tonight and really explain what FACE is about, which is family and community engagement. So without further ado, I will bring up someone from our amazing team who will also be presenting, and that is our Director of Family and Community Engagement, Ms. Pamela Peterson.
So, good evening, Madam President, distinguished members of the board, to our superintendent and executive members. My name, as she has already stated, is Pamela Peterson, and I have the privilege of being the Director of Family and Community Engagement. And at this time, I'm going to say it again, our amazing team members come and introduce themselves.
Good evening. My name is Leola Williams. I am the parent coordinator for Garnertown, Fostertown, and Guinea Avenue Memorial School.
Good evening. I am Laura Vega. I am the parent coordinator for Bonneville and Vales Gate STEAM Academy.
Good evening. My name is Mayra Araujo, and I support Horizon Sun, the Hudson, and New Windsor schools.
Good evening, I'm Bill Morgan. I'm the Parent Involvement Coordinator for Middle School, South Middle School, Heritage Middle School, all of Temple Hill and all of Meadow Hill.
Good evening, and I'm the parent coordinator for the high schools. My name is Tony Roncal.
Good evening, my name is Corey Rogers, and I am the McKinney-Vento liaison for the district, and I work in partnership with the Family and Community Engagement team. All schools.
So, what does family and community engagement look like? It's a hodgepodge of many things, and it's important to understand that engagement absolutely is a shared responsibility. And that's what this team really focuses on. They are constantly supporting parents. The supports that are displayed, it's displayed through the work that they do in many ways, whether they're looking for collaboration with school administration, they're supporting parents with the parent portal, they're supporting students that are transitioning in new to the district if they're newcomers. Every single area of this district, this team is collaborating and engaging with, whether it's transportation, registration, our nursing department, if a family needs supplies, that's what this team is supporting and doing. So they're constantly developing partnerships with administration, with faculty and staff. Every single parent coordinator collaborates with the school that they support. And they also provide, and foster the connections that they have, not just with the schools, but within our community too. And we'll talk a little bit about that tonight as well. So you're going to hear from the elementary parent coordinators, the middle school and the high school parent coordinators, as well as our McKinney-Vento coordinator.
Good evening. I think I'm too tall for this microphone. I'm like, good evening once again. Family and community engagement resource space is something we created in 2022 and 2023. These spaces are located at all levels of elementary, middle school, and high school. Each family has access to this resource space at their fingertips. In each FACE space, families will have the opportunity to obtain important information. Examples. We have here the Orange County Family Resource Guide. We have the 2024-25 School Year Code of Conduct. And if you look to the back, to my left, that's what a FACE space look like. That's my Vanna White back there. That's my Vanna White right back there. And the information that we supply is very pertinent to the families. And then also it gives them resources. And also in addition, we give them resources that can help support them in their concerns and questions. I'm sorry, maybe I'm too close. Sorry. I'm trying to eat the mic.
Sorry. In addition to the face spaces, we also have parent coordinators located in each building. We are able to communicate with our families in both English and Spanish through bilingual parent coordinators and our face spaces. When we encounter families with engagement, we give the tools to help them empower themselves. And I also want you to know that even at our each of our schools, we have something called, how can we help you posters? And each posters are listed right by our face spaces and throughout the school, so that the children know who their principals, principal, assistant principal, school social worker, school psychologist and bully prevention liaison, health office, McKinney-Vento liaison, and the parent involvement coordinators are. And this is in English and in Spanish. Thank you.
So our FACE team, hello again, has 3 bilingual parent coordinators, which enhances our work, which allows us to enhance our work in the school community and has allowed us to build our relationships with our Hispanic and Latino families in the community as well. Access for the families is important because it allows them to be involved with their children's education and exposes them to essential resources. One of those resources is the Parent Portal app, which gives the parents access to their students' attendance, their grades, and the informed conversations they can have with school personnel if needed to access through that app. Family engagement is a direct correlation to student success. We encourage families to be involved by offering a variety of ways to participate and volunteer in our schools. We assist in translating for families so that families can participate in their child's education and feel welcomed and affirmed. Community-based organizations are often included in our FACE experiences. These organizations are critical to providing additional support, and services to our families. Thank you.
Now I'm going to say everything that they said in Spanish. Buenas tardes. Cada escuela tiene un espacio localizado en las entradas de las escuelas que se conoce como el espacio de FACE y fue creado en el año 22-23. Cada espacio de las familias, en cada espacio las familias tendrán la oportunidad de obtener información importante como la guía de recursos de familiares del condado de Orange, la guía, el calendario escolar de la escuela y el código de conducta del año 24-25. Además de estos espacios, tenemos también coordinadores de familias en las escuelas que están para ayudar a todas las familias y les ofrecemos las herramientas para que ellos puedan empoderarse. If I'm going too fast, please let me know. I will slow down. El equipo de FACE cuenta con 3 coordinadores de padres bilingües, el señor Roncar, la señora Laura Vega y myself, Mayra Araujo. Y esto ha mejorado grandemente en la comunicación que tenemos con nuestra comunidad en las escuelas y ha permitido construir unas relaciones con las familias hispanas. La participación familiar tiene una correlación directa con el éxito de los estudiantes, por lo que animamos a las familias a estar involucrados, ofreciendo una variedad de maneras de participar y ser voluntarios en nuestras escuelas. Ayudamos a traducir para las familias para que puedan participar en la educación de sus hijos y sentirse bienvenidos y afirmados. Thank you.
Thank you, Myra. It's so important that when we speak to families, we always speak in both languages because they don't always understand English or they don't always understand Spanish. So we're lucky that we have 3 bilingual members of our team that we could always count on to speak to our families and help them understand what's going on. There are many ways FACE supports the middle level. The supports that were mentioned by my colleagues at the elementary level are also done at the middle level. We are able to connect with parents at our orientations, our open houses, our parent-teacher conferences, our middle school selection tours and events. FACE connects the dots between the families, the school, and the community. When families reach out to us on a one-to-one basis, it helps if we can look up information to see where they're at in infant and campus and in safe schools to support their child's educational needs. I remember one time I was at an event and a gentleman came up to me. He had all these concerns. He wasn't sure what was going on with his child, and he needed to be connected to exceptional learners. I looked up his information. I said, I'll help you. So the next day I went to the Board of Ed, and we were able to come up with a solution immediately. So that's why it's important that we have the resources to connect the families as best as we can. We connect families also with community-based organizations on an individual basis. We do this by having tabling at events, and at the building and at our district levels, and they get to talk to the community agencies as they go around to each table, and it's very helpful. They connect right away. This year, we are looking to have our Parent Connect at the building level. This can be done on various topics such as assessment nights, curriculum nights, internet safety nights, STEM days and STEM nights, literacy day or literacy night, and so much more. We also have experience such as Hispanic Heritage Month and Black History Month nights to honor and highlight diverse cultures within the Newburgh and Large City School District. We've developed culturally responsive experiences for all of our families. Buildings can also hold conversations with the principals. This is a good way for parents to meet on a monthly basis with their administrators in the building and have a conversation on a variety of topics. Friday Night Lights is an opportunity that started last year in partner with the District Attorney Hoovler and is funded by our MBK grant. This program is for all middle school students to have a safe place to go after school on a Friday night. The program last year was hosted at South Middle School. Parent workshops were also included during this Friday Night Lights program. We are looking forward to running this program again this school year.
I'm back again. I'm going to say in Spanish. De la misma manera que en las escuelas elementales es lo mismo, damos el mismo apoyo para las escuelas de intermedia. Nos conectamos con los padres a través de orientaciones, el día de puertas abiertas, conferencia de padres y maestros, visitas de selección de escuelas intermedias y todos los eventos que ofrecemos de las escuelas y el distrito. FACE es el enlace entre familias, la escuela y la comunidad. Cuando las familias se comunican con nosotros uno a uno, utilizamos varios recursos para apoyarlos en las necesidades educacionales de sus niños. Ejemplos de estos es Infinite Campus and Safe Schools. Conectamos a las familias también con organizaciones comunitarias de forma individual y cuando tenemos diferentes eventos en el distrito. Este año escolar buscamos que los padres se conecten más con las escuelas a través de las noches de evaluación, noches de plan de estudios, noches de seguridad de Internet y más, noche de alfabetización, noche del mes de la herencia hispana, noche del mes de la historia afroamericana y noche del mes de la historia de la mujer. También las escuelas pueden tener conversaciones con el director. Esta es una buena manera de reunirse con los padres mensualmente para hablar sobre una variedad de temas. También tuvimos la oportunidad de tener el programa de Friday Night Lights, que comenzó el año pasado en asociación con el fiscal de distrito, el señor Hoovler, y está financiado por nuestra subvención MBK. Este es un programa para todos los estudiantes de secundaria que tengan un lugar seguro a donde ir después de las escuelas los viernes en la noche. Este programa fue alojado en la escuela de South Middle School y también se incluyeron talleres para padres durante el evento. Esperamos con ansiedad ejecutar este programa nuevamente este nuevo año. Thank you.
Good evening again. So I'm gonna go back and forth in English and Spanish as well. So I'm gonna talk about some of the bullet points up there. So partnership and collaboration with buildings. To be honest, I think I could speak for the team. Our work would not be possible without the collaboration of the school buildings and staff. Creating a supportive and welcoming environment for parents requires a collective effort from everyone. From the moment parents enter the building, where they are greeted by our security team and guided through safety protocols, to the clean and organized spaces we maintain, to the engagement of school staff as parents arrive, excuse me, and finally providing dedicated spaces for parents to meet with staff and parent coordinators. Each step is crucial in fostering an inclusive atmosphere. I'm going to say it in Spanish now. Colaboración con los edificios. Nuestro trabajo no sería posible sin la colaboración de los edificios y nuestro personal de las escuelas. Crear un ambiente acogedor y de apoyo para los padres requiere el esfuerzo colectivo de todos. Desde el momento que los padres ingresan en el edificio, donde reciben por nuestro equipo de seguridad y guiados a través de protocolos de seguridad hasta los espacios limpios y organizados que mantenemos. La participación del personal de la escuela cuando los padres llegan y finalmente brindando espacios dedicados para los padres que se puedan reunir con el personal y los coordinadores de padres. Cada paso es crucial para fomentar un ambiente inclusivo. Next. So the next point that I'm going to speak about is parent liaison. I think this is the most fulfilling aspect of being a parent coordinator, is being accessible to parents and offering supports in various ways. This includes listening and guiding them through the educational system, accompanying them to meetings with school staff when they feel overwhelmed or need assistance, and to help bridge cultural and language barriers to ensure equity for all families. Again, in Spanish. Enlace de padres. El aspecto más satisfactorio de ser un coordinador de padres es ser accesible a los padres y ofrecerles apoyos de varias maneras. Esto incluye escucharlos y guiarlos a través del sistema educativo, acompañándolos a reuniones con el personal de la escuela cuando se sienten abrumados o necesitan ayuda, y ayudarlos a superar las barreras culturales lingüísticas para garantizar la equidad para todas las familias. And I'm just going to say this part right here, which is graduating requirements and increasing awareness. I just want to speak a little bit about this. I think these are the two elements that are essential for families to understand in order to effectively support their child's educational success. As a team, I can speak for my team that we are dedicated in raising awareness in every district and school social event, where we also incorporate this focus in our planning of workshops and Title I events, using these opportunities to support our families. We have an upcoming event in the high school, our annual Books and Breakfast, which will be now in December. We were planning on doing it in November. At this event, families can meet school administrators and faculty to learn about literacy supports, choose from a selection of books to take home, and connect with community-based organizations offering various resources and supports. Also, last year, we also launched a pilot program called College Bound Workshop, led by the FACE team and Pupil Personnel Services in collaboration with Latinos Unidos of Hudson Valley. These workshops included both student and parent participations, where families were encouraged to attend as facilitators provided important information on on New York State high school requirements, post-graduation pathways, college and career admission criteria, school scholarship opportunities, and financial aid. We also reviewed high school transcripts from the students and gave them transcripts on their own. Thank you.
Good evening again, everyone. As the McKinney-Vento liaison for the district, my primary responsibility is to advocate for the educational rights of our students that are in temporary housing, ensuring that they have the same opportunities that are available to them as every other student to achieve academic success. Now, in the previous presentation, they showed Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which really states if you don't have your basic necessities, it's really difficult to learn. So think about our students who may not know where they're going to sleep from night to night. They might not have food, clothing, school supplies, the tools that they need to succeed. So one of the things I do with our families is I meet with them one-on-one to identify their barriers and help to remove them so that their children have what they need to learn. I provide things like timely address changes. Our families that are in temporary housing, they move a lot. And I remove that barrier of trying to prove residency where they don't have a permanent address. Making sure that transportation is provided quickly to the new temporary address. That leads to less absences. So if they don't have those things done in a timely manner, those children tend to accumulate many absences. Making sure they have school supplies, hygiene products, coats, it's starting to get a little chilly out there now, clothing, and we also have food programs such as our school backpack program and school pantries in 2 of our school buildings. I work closely with our PPS staff, health office, building administration, our registration department, transportation department, to make sure that our families are supported. I'm working in partnership with our parent involvement coordinators, has extended my reach within the school buildings to build capacity in identifying our students that may have gone unnoticed, to make sure that they have the supports that they need. Providing safe spaces with programs like the Hope Project and Her Time to Play to address the social and emotional needs of our students so that they feel like school is the place to be. Participating in community coalitions such as Team Newburgh to build a network of resources to support our students and families. And currently our team is working for the upcoming holidays to create experiences and provide resources and support for our families at our Thankful Basket giveaway and our holiday bazaar. And we are currently accepting donations for both of these events. Feel free to give. Thank you.
So family and community engagement falls under the Division of Equity and Access because we do want to provide equity and access for all of our students. So it's a great place for it to go. And it's important to note that it is largely funded by federal monies. So there isn't like a budget line that really supports that. So it's important to know that as well. So when we look at, where you at, Pam? When we look at family and community engagement over the last 3 years, that's what this is up here. So in our first rollout, when I came to the district, I sat down with Dr. Campbell and we really looked at that strategic plan and that vision. And her real main focus was our literacy initiatives and really engaging with parents in our best ways possible. So the face spaces came into play. Who do you go to came into play because we would walk in buildings and not know who was there. And if we don't know, how do our parents know? We also looked at creating book buckets. That started in our first year as well throughout the community. And it has continued. So as we look at these 3-year spans, each year talks about is mentioning what we created, but don't think that they're not going on because they all go on into now. And there's more things that we didn't even list up there. Our first iteration of Parent University really focused on creating opportunities for us to have workshops and conversations with parents that support what parents need to know, whether it was a literacy night, a Regents night, everything you need to know about special ed and your transitions. We partnered with curriculum and instruction as well as exceptional learners to really create opportunities. And we created a survey at the end of the year and we got some really great feedback from Latinos Unidos, which was, can we change the term Parent University? Some of our parents in the community, were like, I didn't go to university, so I guess I can't go to those events. So we changed it to Parent Connect. And it was just that simple. So every time we create something in the community, we want feedback, we want surveys. We also looked at, what's a good night to do these events? Should we do them during the day? Should we offer them at night? Should we create it with just the building? Because what we noticed the first year also was that when we hold it at this location, a lot of people aren't showing up. But if we hold it at this specific building, we've got a lot of people showing up. So we switched gears a little bit last year. The Family Reading Day is in April. It's our partnership with our library. It is an amazing day if you've never been to it. It is phenomenal. Everything is out there. But the main focus of that day is reading, reading, and more reading. We give away books. We talk about books. We have different people that come out and engage with the students. Did we have Clifford the Big Red Dog?
No.
Who was that? We had somebody out there engaging with the students, which was amazing. Bernstein Bears, thank you. I knew it was somebody from a book. The Bernstein Bears came out, and they've done that every year. But the beauty of the day is kids walking away with books. Little kids, big kids, medium kids, older kids, over 50, that are getting that book and saying, I can't wait to read this book. And oh my gosh, look at this book I got, and I had a great day today. And we've been blessed with great weather, and it's been amazing. So we've carried that on. The turkey giveaways, we do this every single November, and it's fine if another building is doing it, because in all honesty, we have a lot of impoverished families. That number rises every single year. And it's real. We don't know how many people are living in a single home. So it's important to make sure that, we're providing food to our families. The Holiday Bazaar is something that we also created and we've carried it on. This year is going to be pretty big. Rumor has it that Santa Claus is coming down from the North Pole. He'll be doing photo ops. He's sending his chair ahead of time. I'm just telling you. So we're going to have did he not tell us he was sending his chair? He's sending his chair ahead of time, and he's going to be there, and we're doing selfies with Santa. Who's doing the selfies? The photo club? They're going to be doing selfies with Santa. So I'm just saying, Santa's coming. I'm just saying. The one thing that we also did this year the first year was the Harlem Wizards. This has been an amazing, amazing fundraiser. Okay, I have 5 minutes. We're going to make it 10. This has been an amazing fundraiser for us because it really does create community within our district and within the schools. The Harlem Wizards are phenomenal. Our students are so excited about these players when they come. We've pretty much had really good sales every single year that we've done it. This year, Mr. Gowaki and Mr. Doughton are super excited because they're teaming up to do it together. That's a disaster in itself, those two. But it's going to be amazing this year as well. And if you want to play on the team, speak to those too. The MD coronation ceremony is something that we also instilled within the first year, and it really helped to cultivate and create an understanding of what MBK is with our younger students. And again, when we talk about the grant funding, one of the biggest problems is that when a grant expires or runs out, it's difficult for us to get it up and keep going again. So with our community partners and our assets, and Pamela will talk about that in a little bit, we really look to foster intentional relationships with our community. And that's why we're so lucky to have the one that we have with District Attorney Hoovler, because with Friday Night Lights, he's really supported that in tremendous ways and supported our MBK students as well. 23, 24.
So one of the things that I would like to highlight that Dr. Freeman Max said, she talked about the transition from Parent University to Parent Connect. And that was something that was very simple for us. And to me, that is an example of what FACE does, because we knock down barriers. We realized that it was a barrier, and we addressed it immediately. And one of the things that I can say about our team is that we engage families, and we do that with intentionalities around partnership, but also we don't want to develop or create anything without them. They understand what their needs are, and so we have to listen. And I think one of the greatest things that this team does is that we listen and that we engage the community. As Dr. Freeman Max said, the work from the first column continues through to 23, 24, and 23, 24 continues into 24, 25. So what you're seeing is an expansion of the work, and you're seeing a depth in the work that we're doing. And we are going to continue to expand the programming and services that we offer our families.
So one thing too that's really big and important that we did this past August was NACA. It was our partnership with Habitat for Humanity and NACA, where we had this big thing that lasted the entire weekend. It was an opportunity for people in the community of Newburgh to come out and learn about home ownership. It was a phenomenal event. Each day, over 1,000 people attended that. So we're going to keep doing those things. Habitat for Humanity really is interested in being our partner, and they are our partner. And this is a list of some of our community partners. And for anyone that's watching at home, if your name's not up there and you know you partner with us, let us know. We didn't forget you, and we'll show you why in a moment. But these are the ones that we're working with, I want to say, just this month. So when we look at the Newburgh Free Library, that's always our partner. St. Luke's Hospital, that's where Newburgh Bakes This is coming out of, the Boys and Girls Club, Catholic Charities. Team Newburgh is phenomenal. They partner with this on everything, and they are amazing. The Kiwanis Club, absolutely. The Rotary Club, the Food Bank of the Hudson Valley. We have 3 food banks in our pantries. 2 up and running food pantries in our schools. 2. Middle School and NFA Maine. NFA Maine and Meadow Hill have food pantries within them, and they get food on a regular basis, and students can get food from there. And then we have a partnership with SNAP-Ed, which is pretty amazing. We recently did a crock pot, and the board members, you got some of the menus and those things from that. We'll be doing another one shortly with Myra at Horizons on the Hudson this week. And then our partnership with Mount St. Mary College this year, we are doing a community dinner with them for our families on their campus. It's the first time we've ever done it, and we are pretty excited about it. Go, we got 2 minutes.
2 minutes, I'll do it in less.
Okay.
So this is our community asset map, and as Dr. Freeman Mack has already stated, in regards to our collaborations and our partnership, you're going to see many of the organizations that we work here. Additionally, there are other agencies that are included in this map that help us to be able to extend the opportunity to support our families, providing more information, services, and programming. This map is on our website, and it's available to our students, it's available to our families, and it's available to our community members, and we assure that it's updated in a timely fashion.
What's the next slide? Yay. So also within your bags, there are magnets. There are several of them in there. Some are in English, some are in Spanish. This is something that we give out to our parents, and it's just a smaller version of how can we help. So again, that parents know who they can reach out to when they need support. Thank you.
Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say, I really want to commend Dr. Mack, Ms. Peterson, and the entire team, because you guys are definitely something for our district to be proud of. You guys are out there every place, every time. Any place I go, and I know you places I don't go, but every place I attend, you guys are there. And it's just a testament to your commitment to this community. And I just want to let you guys know that you're appreciated. And I love what Mr. Morgan said, because I've always said, and the superintendent will tell you, I've always said that this is one of the most important departments in our district, because this is what connects the families, the communities to our schools. And oftentimes, you guys are on the front line, and you do an incredible job. And I love what you said when you said connecting the dots between the families, the schools, and the communities. And please continue doing that, and we wish you well. And anything you need, see the superintendent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go home.
Thank you. Great job. I'll put some of my items on there as well for Mr. Howard and the rest of the trustees to approve under the guise of face. We appreciate you. Thank you. I know that we built this team up. We understand the importance. The Board of Education has been very supportive in terms of what you do, so we do thank you. We know that many of you cover many buildings. But we appreciate you and continue to do great work on behalf of our community. So thank you very much. Thank you. We know that every community needs credible messengers, and you are our credible messenger. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Get home safely. Proud to share that last week the district offered professional development for our staff. Our team developed a wide range of offerings that were directly related to teaching and learning, whether directly related to grade levels and subject matter for teachers or to topics that relate to all teachers regardless of specifics like literacy, teaching English language learners, and those with learning differences. I'd like to say that the chart, I know that it was shared with some of you trustees. I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to really take a look at it, but we offered a wide variety of items for teachers to have an opportunity to choose. So they had, courses that they were required to do, as well as items that we thought would be, something that they would enjoy doing, because we know that wellness, as we talk about students, we have to remember that, our staff members also need social and emotional support. And so we try to offer some of those items that they could select from the list as well during that day. We offered professional development to every single group, all but one. And one group in particular, the administrator did have a meeting with that group and talked about best practices, but every single group in our district received professional development. So I'd like to say kudos to the team for doing that, because we wanted to make sure that everyone received supports, resources, and tools. I'd like to share some of the data we collected from that day. This data will be used by the Division of Curriculum and Instruction to inform the development of future professional development agendas and offerings. 317 people who attended the day-long session provided feedback. Of those, 70% of those who attended sessions at the elementary level indicated the overall day agreed to some degree that the offerings were beneficial to their growth and development. At the secondary level, 85.7% of respondents rated the overall quality of the professional development as good or excellent, and 80% of respondents felt confident that they could apply what they learned in the day's session to their role. In the spirit of transparency, I feel it should be noted that approximately 18% of our staff called in sick on the day of our professional development, missing a critical opportunity to learn and connect professionally with colleagues across the district. So thank you all for those of you who participated and saw the benefit in learning and growing. Item 4.4, resolution to approve 2025 RCLS operating budget for consideration.
Can I have a motion?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll turn it over to the clerk of the board.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the approval of the minutes from the October 24th, 2024 regular meeting.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Duray?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Politi? Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello? Ms.
Yes.
Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
That concludes my items, Madam President.
Thank you. Okay, item 6.1, the resolution to adopt policy on the first reading, number 9620, child abuse in the educational setting. Can I have a motion?
Second.
Sorry, I know we're in mid-vote, but Mr. Shaw, would you be able to provide some context to this policy so that we can, so that everyone can understand why it's there?
So for child abuse in an educational setting, that's a required aspect of the training of all of your certificated staff. And in fact, board members are also mandated reporters. So it's very important to have a modern policy of this nature with the supporting documentation behind it. Your former policy was not complete, not as complete as what we have here today.
Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Madam President. So for clarification, Mr. Shaw, this policy comes from NSBA, from the New York State?
NSBA is your policy service, and they did provide you with this, and there were a couple of little adaptations along the way to putting it before you.
Thank you.
Ray.
Thank you, Madam President. So that's to say that we did make some changes, the district itself did make some changes to these, or some additions, or?
Very minor changes. For example, if the chief executive officer would be the person accused, you need someone to report to, that kind of thing.
But nothing of substance, this comes from the state?
Well, this is very much parallel to the state law, but this comes from your policy service, New York State School Board Association.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Mr. DeRay.
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Ms. Politi.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello.
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello.
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher.
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher.
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Yes.
Okay, and I'll turn it over to the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources.
Thank you, Madam President. On the Human Resources agenda tonight, we have items 7.1 through 7.16 for your consideration on consent.
Would anyone like to separate any out? I would like to separate out 7.5. So can I have a motion on, I'm sorry.
7.14, please.
Mr. DeRay, you said 7.14?
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So can I have a motion on resolution 7.1 through 7.16 minus 7.5 and 7.14?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion on roll call.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Ms. Politi.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello.
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello.
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher.
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher.
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Yes.
Mr. DeRay.
Yes.
Okay, item 7.5. Can I have a motion? And a second? Second. Okay. Discussion. Okay, I just want to ask, I understand that this position is going to increase the efficiency in this department, but I don't understand why it takes priority over other much-needed positions like teachers' assistants and teachers that are actually on the front lines with the students. So can anyone explain that? No.
No, I can.
Oh, I was going to. Okay.
Well, I can answer why this is on this evening. So for this department, for equity and access, we currently have a principal typist position in that department. At some point, we will be coming back to you to abolish the principal typist position because we're hoping that you create this position this evening. We can't ask you to abolish the principal typist this evening because there's somebody sitting in it right now. So if we did that ahead of ourselves, that person would not have a job. To answer your question about prioritizing this position, this is I believe, you can help me, Natasha, this is the one person that supports the clerical support for that entire division.
I think it's important to note also, just because in terms of, I know that Dr. Freeman Mack and her team talked about this evening, the amount of grant funding that they deal with. So they do a lot of working with our grants director, making sure things are in alignment. We also have added to that division the school improvement grant, which also require some clerks portions when it comes to funding and making sure that those things are reconciled properly. So this is a change in that. We have brought to the board if there is a need for a teacher, we have done that. We have brought that to you. I think about last month, I think we brought 2 or 3 positions. So if there is a need, we do bring it to the board. We explain that need for the position and why we need it. I think that there was a couple of things. What we try to do when we do look for positions that need to be filled so that it doesn't impact the overall budget. So we do bring that forward to the board.
Ms. Boucher?
2 questions. This would include FACE, correct?
Yes.
And
Yes.
it includes FACE, so they would also be in, okay.
That's correct.
My second question would be, can you differentiate between a typist and a clerk?
Yes.
Thank you.
So they're both written civil service examinations. None of them are entry level. You start as clerk, you go to senior clerk, you go to principal clerk. So there's a rise in the level of responsibility for each one of the positions. The difference between the two is the principal typist, you still must take a typing test for principal typist. For principal clerk, you can still have the higher authority work, but the person does not have to take a typing test.
Ms. Peterson?
I think also another thing that I would like to add to Mrs. Limer, the clerk also has some financial with more POs. And with this division and with the amount of grant funding, it is essential that that person also, so that is why we looked at the position to change it.
And both of them are, in essence, they have some administrative roles as well.
They can supervise, yes.
They can supervise, and with the oversight of the grants, and there's the Smart Scholars Grant, there's the Gear Up Grant, there's the MBK grants, a lot of that work is being done, but we just need to streamline it more efficiently.
That's it? Yeah. Roll call?
Ms. Politi,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello,
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello,
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher,
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher,
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli,
Yes.
Mr. DeRay,
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Item 7.14, resolution to approve tenure recommendations. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And second. Discussion? Mr. DeRay?
I like to separate these out because someone achieving tenure shouldn't be lumped in with 15 other resolutions. So I would like to congratulate Danielle Small on her achievement of tenure.
That's it? Okay. Roll call?
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello,
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello,
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher,
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher,
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli,
Yes.
Mr. DeRay,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Ms. Politi.
Yes.
Madam President, at this point, I would like to request that an item be added to the agenda, 7.17, which is a resolution to appoint additional winter coaches.
Okay. Can I have a motion
Second.
and discussion? Roll call.
Resolution to add Ms. Christine Bello,
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello,
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher,
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher,
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Duray.
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Ms. Politi.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Okay, right now I turn it over to
Point
these.
of order.
We still have to vote on the,
It's been added, so you need to entertain a motion and a second on 7.17, and then we can vote.
So moved.
You need to entertain the motion, ma'am. I can't.
Can I have a motion for 7.17?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Thomas, the motion is, be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education in the Newburgh Large City School District hereby approves the following winter athletic coaching appointments as listed for the 24-25 school year. Number 1, Parks William, wrestling varsity, boys head, a stipend of $7,345. Number 2, Conetta Nicholas, wrestling varsity assistant, boys, a stipend of $4,015. Roll call. Ms. Thomasina Bello.
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher.
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher.
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Duray.
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Abstain.
Ms. Politi.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello.
Yes,
thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items.
thank you. And now I turn it over to the Assistant Superintendent of Finance. For tonight is Ms. Peterson.
So tonight, the business department, the finance department has items 8.1 to 8.10 on consent.
Does anyone want to separate any out? Mr. Stewart?
8.6, please.
Anyone else? Victoria?
8.7.
Anyone else? Okay. Can I have a motion on resolutions 8.1 through 8.10 minus 8.6 and 8.7?
So moved.
Second.
And discussion and roll call.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher.
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher.
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Duray.
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Ms. Politi.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello.
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello.
Yes.
Item 8.6, resolution to approve change orders for CTE building. Can I have a motion
Second.
and discussion? Mr. Stewart?
Yes, on this CTE site, I was just wondering why the soil problem wasn't picked up or discovered when they did the site survey. I asked a few questions around from people in the district. It's been known as a dumping grounds for years. I guess there was 2 old buildings there. I'm just wondering why it wasn't found originally and put in the original bid. I know we have to go forward and get this done, but I'm just questioning why it wasn't found. And if we have any recourse.
Ms. Peterson?
So I know we did provide the board in some administrative content, some concerns that we had with some of the footings and the soil. We do have our CM, right? I know you're the CM, but I'm like, I couldn't think of the acronym. I was like, I know that there's an acronym that goes with that CM that's gonna provide more in detail why we had to go about doing a change order.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm sitting here on behalf of the project team. The architect was not able to make it, but we can speak on behalf of the findings. So there was a initial geotech report that was done previously under CPL when they were managing this project. In that geotech report, there was findings on what the soil condition was. So based on that information, there was a set of parameters that was put into the bid with the current contractor. So there was, as the resolution or the recommendation states, there was a 7,000 cubic yards of unsuitable soils put in there, as well as another 100,000 in excess to try to cover what the geotech report reflected. But ultimately, what we ended up finding out in the field is a lot more unsuitable soils than what that initial geotech report had discovered. So we had unit rates in the contract that the contractor could use if he hit, anything outside of that limit of the allowance. Those unit rates seem to be relative to what the unit market is for that work. So additionally, there was some work that the original site contract had that ultimately we found did not get performed, like the oil tank for the existing maintenance building that was on site. So we seem to be finding a number of things that were not relative to what was initially investigated on the site.
I know that the board probably has more questions. I know that we will have a complete capital project update in the next meeting, where we will have our owner's rep as well as questions. Part of the reason at that time the recommendation was made to seek, I'm gonna carefully say this, I'm going to leave it down there, it was to seek to change some of the aspects of this project were these things that we are now discovering, and we're trying to make sure that we're on top of it and we're moving the process forward.
So do we have any recourse from the original report that we can recapture funds?
So that's probably more of an executive conversation.
Okay.
So we'll save that part of the conversation for executive session. And we will have a presentation in 2 weeks, I believe, so we could have that in executive session.
So should we table this till we have that presentation?
I think that we need to make sure, I think that the soil content, and correct me if I'm wrong, the soil content not being usable is not going to change. It needs to be treated so that we can move forward with the project and keep the project on task. So the soil is the soil. It needs to be remedied. We need to make sure that we're preparing the site for construction. So it is not our recommendation is that we need to move forward, and it's a part of the ongoing cost of construction.
Okay, anyone? All right, roll call.
Ms. Victoria Boucher,
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli,
Yes.
Mr. Duray,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Ms. Politti,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello,
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello,
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher.
Yes.
Resolution 8.7, resolution to approve bids for winter athletic transportation. Can I have a motion?
Second.
Second. And discussion? Victoria?
Are we able to function without one of these companies?
No.
So if I wanted to amend this to take out one of these companies?
So every route that is being tabulated, I know that that was kind of a short answer. Each one of these athletic transportation route has been bid and covered. There is a tabulation and a process that they go through, so that would mean that you're rejecting, and I think that this might be a question, you're rejecting the entire bid and the process, correct, David? I don't want to misspeak.
It really comes down to which contractor or contractors would be involved. What would be the missing element if you took one out right now?
Well, within the bid tabulation sheet, each event, each game, each section is assigned and tabulated, and I think that that was a part of the bid process and how they tabulated the bid and making sure, because many companies bid on certain routes. So it's a part of the whole process. So we have our winter transportation bid. We go through a process by kind of selecting the companies for whatever route is that they're bidding for. So I do think that it would cause a great concern.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
No.
Okay. And I will now turn it over to the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction for Elementary.
Thank you. The Office of Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction Elementary presents item 9.1 for your consideration upon consent.
Can I have a motion? And second.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll now turn it over to the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction Secondary, Ms. Soto.
The Curriculum and Instruction Division, secondary level, requests the board's consideration on consent agenda items 10.1 and 10.2.
Does anyone want to separate any? No? Okay, can I have a motion?
Second.
Discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Howard? Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items this evening.
Thank you. And now our Assistant Superintendent of Exceptional Learners, Mr. Bear.
Thank you, Madam President. The Exceptional Learner Division has 11.1 for the board's consideration.
Can I have a motion? And a second? And discussion? And roll call.
Ms. Politi?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Thank you. That concludes my items.
Thank you. Ms. Small, it was so important that Mr. DeRay took your item out. We just want to recognize you and acknowledge your service to our district and our scholars. Thank you for the great work that you do. And receiving tenure is no small feat. That means you've stood the test of time, and you are here, committed, dedicated, and we value you. Thank you for your dedication and your service. Congratulations. Thank you. Is that your child? Nice to meet you. Thank you for being here. We know it was a long night, but it was worth it. We ended on a high note, right? Thank you for being here. She's important to us, and so are you. Thank you.
Can I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Christine Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Thomasina Bello?
Yes.
Ms. Mackenzie Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Victoria Boucher?
Yes.
Mr. Bergarelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRay? Mr. Howard? Ms. Politi?
This